Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael and we're going to be getting right back into some more Reddit stories. If you enjoy the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Now, without further ado, let's begin. This story was posted by a user named Status Garden in the Pregnant subreddit. The post is titled, "I was held involuntarily at a mental hospital for saying I didn't want to be pregnant anymore." A couple of notes up front. I am a first-time mom and this was a planned and wanted pregnancy. I am still trying to process the last 72 hours, which has caused me significant trauma and distress. I am writing this out publicly to warn other mothers. This happened in Texas. I am currently 9 weeks pregnant. I have been to the ER a couple of times for severe 24/7 nausea, which is triggering significant panic attacks. The nausea is the worst at night, which has been keeping me from sleeping, making my anxiety worse, and I'm unable to keep down food and liquids. It's been seriously horrible. My first two ER doctors were at separate ER locations and both gave me hydration. One gave me Zofran plus sugar, but then I had issues with the Zofran backing me up. I had another bad night of vomiting and panic attacks, and I called my mom in the morning, crying because I was so miserable. She said she would go to a different ER with me, one that was a full hospital with OBs on staff. When I get there, I explained the situation to a male ER doctor who spoke with me for less than 5 minutes. I told him about my issues with waking up with nausea, then the panic attacks, and the lack of sleep. I told him that the panic attacks, combined with everything, scared me and made me not want to be pregnant anymore, but I made it clear to him that I just wanted relief and had no plan on hurting myself or anyone else. He refused to give me any medication, not even an IV bag to help with fluids. He sent a social worker to talk to me about the panic attacks and said she could find a facility that would take me, which could help with medication, sleep, etc. I said okay because I was so desperate at that point and had been in the ER for hours with no help whatsoever. He never even called an OB. I haven't even had an ultrasound. I get sent to the new clinic and by the time I get through processing, it's 3 a.m. and I'm crying because I'm having high anxiety and I haven't slept. They never gave me my nighttime medications or anything. I finally go to bed around 4 a.m. Then they wake me back up at 6 a.m. to do my vitals and say I need to itemize my belongings. Once I woke up, the nausea hit me immediately and I asked for Zofran, which they refused because I had to see the internal medicine doctor first. I didn't get Zofran until 10:30 a.m., at which point I had missed breakfast and was nonstop vomiting, but the doctor would only allow one 4 milligrams pill every 12 hours. I was so sick. Eventually, I'm seen by a psychiatrist who I thought would be able to help me with meds, but he said no, I couldn't take anything because I'm pregnant, and I'd have to talk to a different doctor who wasn't going to be in until Monday. At that point, I freak out because now I'm away from home, they aren't giving me my over-the-counter meds like Unisum and B6 or my prenatal vitamins, and they're not giving me enough Zofran to keep the nausea at bay. I said I wanted to leave then as I was there voluntarily, and the doctor was mad and said I'd have to sign an AMA form and he'd place me on a 24-hour hold where the other doctor would talk to me before the 24 hours and determine if they'd try to get a court order to keep me. I was so shocked. I asked if there was any way I could talk to someone as I didn't want to stay and they were holding me involuntarily at that point. He said no. I'm a panicky, sick mess after this, and I go through all the paperwork they gave me, which included the Patient Bill of Rights. It stated that patients had the right to be discharged within 4 hours of request unless the doctor believed I was a danger to myself or others, or that I was mentally unable to make medical decisions for myself. I requested a written justification from the doctor outlining which of those reasons he was using to justify the 24-hour hold, and he refused. He just kept saying I wasn't allowed to leave until I spoke with the other doctor, who wasn't going to be in until the next day. At around 3:30, my mom and fiance came for visitation and I brought my paperwork with me and showed them the patient rights documents. They were upset, so they stayed 2.5 hours after visitation and argued with them to release me so I could go home, since they weren't even treating me anyway and were withholding medications. The doctor refused to talk to my family even though I specifically included them on my medical release forms. So they had a right to request that information and were requesting a justification for keeping me there past the 4 hours. It got so bad that my mom even called the police and filed a police report. They refused to let me go, so I had to stay another night without Zofran and couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't keep food or water down. There was no doctor on staff at the time, so when the nurses called to get my Zofran prescription increased, the doctor didn't didn't answer, and they couldn't do anything for me. I could tell the nurses were trying their best and were very frustrated for me. The original doctor came back an hour before the 24 hours were up and clearly did not want to talk to me. I think the other doctor said he wasn't getting involved because it was turning into a legal situation at that point. He was super short with me, and when I requested justification for the 24-hour hold, he said the ER doctor had noted that I didn't want to be pregnant anymore and used that as justification. I'm absolutely floored at this point. He didn't want to speak further about the issue and discharged me, but apparently no one knew how to discharge me because it was the weekend, so it took another few hours to even leave. The whole situation was so miserable, and I legitimately feel traumatized by the experience. I still feel like I need help with the nausea and panic attacks, but I'm scared to go back to the ER now. It's been so horrible, and I don't know what to do besides talk to my OB at my upcoming appointment and hope she's more understanding of my problems. I'm going to file complaints with the hospital and the state regarding what happened. I'm also going to consult with a few lawyers to see if I have a case against them. This whole experience has left me feeling incredibly hopeless and frustrated with the medical system. I feel like I was punished for saying I didn't want to be pregnant anymore. As for me, I am currently staying at my mom's. I was able to finally get some rest and take enough Zofran, Unisum, and B6 to keep the vomiting at bay for a bit. I'm trying my best to keep my cool and avoid a panic attack. I appreciate any advice anyone could give on how to navigate this situation. Update. First, I'd like to say thank you to the outpouring of support. It really means a lot to me. I'm going to start with a very small update, and then at the end, I'm going to answer some questions and clear up some misconceptions about what happened. Update. I did see my new OBGYN and had my first ultrasound. My little guy is measuring right on time and had a heartbeat of 167. I feel overwhelmed with relief knowing he is safe in there and doing well. I explained the whole situation to my OBGYN and she was incredibly understanding. She gave me a new prescription for Zofran and took some labs while I was there to check my electrolytes and probably some other things. I'll have another follow-up with her soon. At this point, I feel comfortable enough working with her, so that's my current plan. As for complaints and legal matters, there isn't much movement on that front due to the holiday, but I still have every intention to pursue those options and will try to update as I can. Now, the other stuff, I did not expect that post to gain as much attention as it did. It was cross-posted many times, and the responses were overwhelmingly sympathetic, but there was a ton of skepticism, especially from doctors who read it. But hey, it's the internet, so that's to be expected, I guess. At the end of the day, I don't need any strangers online to believe what happened to me because I have recourse in real life, and that's ultimately what matters. I was accused of changing my story, but I think that was mainly from people who skimmed my post. Below, I'm going to clear up some things and provide some additional details, not because I have to, but because I think if there's going to be discourse about my experience, I wanted to start from a place of accuracy regarding the timeline and events. Starting with this, at no point was the court involved in the decision-making process. I went to the ER willingly. They made it seem like they were not equipped to help my situation and that the other facility would be able to help me with my sleeping and panic attacks. I was so run down by the time the social worker came to my room that I'd have agreed to go anywhere they said would provide me with relief. I went to the new facility voluntarily of my own free will. There was no 72-hour hold. When I mentioned 72 hours in my last post, I meant that the whole situation, from going to the ER to leaving the new facility, took place over 72 hours. Once I got to the new facility and met with the doctors, I realized that I was not in the right place to get the care I personally needed. I was away from my support system, not being given the proper medication to control my vomiting, my anxiety was significantly heightened, and I was not being given any additional treatment or resources. So to me, there was no point in me being at the facility, and it was indeed making my situation undoubtedly worse. After speaking with the on-call psychiatrist, he told me that he thought the ER doctor misled me and that I'd need to sign an AMA form, which would place me on a 24-hour hold. It was clear he did not want to be the one to discharge me and insisted I needed to speak with the attending. He mentioned the possibility of a court order, but said it was unlikely they'd get one for my case. After that conversation, I went to review the paperwork they gave me during admission. I found the Patient Bill of Rights, which stated that for voluntary patients, they had a right to be released within 4 hours of their request unless I changed my mind and wanted to stay. I was under the age of 16 and my guardian didn't want to release me if the doctor had reason to believe that I might meet the criteria for court-ordered services or emergency detention because I'm likely to cause serious harm to myself, I'm likely to cause serious harm to others, or my condition will continue to deteriorate and I am unable to make informed decisions as to whether or not to stay for treatment. After I read that, I brought the papers to the nurses and requested a justification from the psychiatrist for the 24-hour hold. I wanted to know which reasons he was using. The psychiatrist did not provide any reason or justification beyond saying that the attending needed to evaluate me. That's it. To be clear, this is illegal. They had zero reason to keep me past the 4 hours. At no time had I indicated I was a threat to myself or others, neither verbally nor in writing on any of the questionnaires that I had filled out during admissions. The attending not working that day is not a legal justification to hold me. Their schedule does not supersede my rights as a patient. Now, after the 24 hours were up, the original on-call doctor came back to discharge me. He was clearly agitated that the attending refused to come in to do the discharge, so I never at any point spoke with the attending who was originally assigned to me. The on-call doctor did not seek a court order to detain me. The conversation lasted about 10 minutes or less. When I asked again for the justification to keep me, he asked me if I said anything to the ER doctor about wanting to end my pregnancy, and I told him I just said I didn't want to be pregnant because I was so miserable. I then tried to ask if he believed that was enough justification for the hold, but he cut me off. It was clear he didn't want to engage in any further conversation. My concern here was the implications of legally being allowed to involuntarily commit any woman who said she didn't want to be pregnant anymore, which seems insane to me. But I digress. To answer questions about the facility, why didn't I just leave? Because this was a locked facility. I couldn't just get up and walk out of the door. How were they able to take me so fast? This facility has been open for only 10 months. They had beds and empty rooms available when I was there. Questions about my ER visits. I had 3 separate visits which took place over 4 weeks. The first ER I went to was a standalone clinic not associated with a larger hospital. The doctor there said that next time I should go to an ER attached to a hospital with labor and delivery. So the next time I went to an ER hospital that I mistakenly thought was a full hospital, but it was a hybrid, and they did not have labor and delivery. The third ER was attached to a full hospital. I was not doctor shopping, I'm just not familiar with the hospital systems here. Regarding my comments about ultrasounds and OBs, I never requested an ultrasound during any of my visits to the ER. I mentioned the ultrasound in the original post just to state that I hadn't had one yet and hadn't been evaluated by an OB yet. My mother has a history of missed miscarriages, so in my head, I thought it could be a possibility, and if I was being denied medication for being pregnant, I was just hoping I did have a viable pregnancy. But again, I didn't request an ultrasound. Concerns regarding DIY abortion. I am not and have never considered a DIY abortion. I am lucky enough to have all the resources I would need to fly anywhere in the world to get appropriate medical care if I had decided to go that route. Both my fiance and I work high-paying remote tech jobs, and in the worst case, we could move out of state tomorrow if I absolutely needed to. Obviously, this isn't an ideal route, but it is an option that is still on the table, even if it's just to get care in a better medical system outside the state of Texas. Medications I'm currently taking: 10 milligrams buspirone twice a day, 50 milligrams Zoloft, Zofran, Unisum plus B6, and prenatal vitamins. No benzodiazepines. So, to cut through all the nonsense, whether you agree or not with the doctor's course of actions, I hope most people can see that the facility was not the right place for me to be. They were not well equipped to handle my pregnancy symptoms, they were clearly understaffed, and they were not providing me with any additional treatment that I wasn't getting at home. There was no reason for me to be there. It made things in my case significantly worse, and I hope maybe, if anything, people can just learn from my experience. Again, I'd like to thank everyone for their support and for the direct messages I received. I'm also so sorry for all the other similar stories I've read. It seems like there's a bigger issue happening here, and I hope others can eventually find peace too. I am going to continue to work diligently with my OBGYN, psychiatrist, and hopefully a therapist, so I can really unpack this entire situation. As I said before, I'll try to update as I can, but I'm sure the complaint and legal process will be slow moving. I'd also like to ask, if you know any attorneys in the DFW area who may be interested in this case, please feel free to send me a private message with their information so I can follow up. I will also try to answer any additional questions in the comments in case there's anything else I'm forgetting. Dharma Bumpkin said, I suffered from hyperemesis gravidarum when I was pregnant, and when I first got admitted to the hospital with it, if I had been told that I was dying, all I would have felt was quiet relief that this would soon be over. My pregnancy was planned and the baby was very much wanted, but it still would have felt like sweet release at the time. Hyperemesis gravidarum used to be the #1 cause of death in pregnant women before IV fluids were able to be administered, according to my doctors at the time. I was in and out of the hospital for months with it. I can't believe that not only did they not treat her, but they actually traumatized her instead. Lemonsen said, the fact that her OB put her back on her Zoloft during the first trimester just shows that her anxiety was bad enough that it was determined to be safer for the mother than the possible risks. When I was pregnant, my OB had me go back on Zoloft in my 3rd trimester because I was extremely depressed. My OB was concerned that my depression would get to the point of being unable to care for my son or myself postpartum. My son was born happy and healthy to a happy and healthy mom. Biddy in Peccadillo said, one of the scariest things to come out of these abortion bans is that whenever someone tells a horrifying story like this, there's just an immediate pile-on of people claiming they are lying because the law doesn't say that, or that it's the doctor's fault for misinterpreting the law, when really it's designed for exactly these outcomes. This next post was made in the parenting subreddit by a user named Challenge Connect. The post is titled, "Husband wants to divorce and start over, says he can't bond with our daughter. Throw away because I want to fix this and I'm paranoid about more people in our lives finding out. It's all so messed up already. I don't want more stress. My husband and I have been married for 5 years. I gave birth to our first child in September, a girl. My husband was present for most of my labor, but things went very wrong and I had to have an emergency C-section. The doctors told him to leave the room and wait outside. In short, he did not see our daughter being born. A week ago, he informed me that he wants to divorce and start over on his dreams of having a family. He insists that he cannot bond with our daughter and says it's because he didn't see her being born. He said a lot about how it's always been a dream of his to have a small, close-knit family, and now he can't have that with me because of the C-section and his not being in the room. His dad suggested therapy, but my husband refused, saying he knew it wouldn't work. I've made sure he knows I'm open to the idea if he changes his mind, but he's been very insistent that he knows this can't be fixed. Part of me knows I'm basically asking for a magic solution here, but does anyone have any ideas on how or if this can be fixed? I'll try to answer any questions anyone may have. Sorry if the formatting isn't correct, I just guessed. Girl No said, he's just using this as an excuse to leave you. To this user court, Millpool said, spot on. Confront him on this. His child is only a few months old and he can bond a million ways with her. If he's going to have one thing not go his way and call it quits, then no family or child he ever has will live up to his unrealistic expectations. Honestly, I'm not sure I'd even want to stay with a man who throws his family away over something so trivial if it's true. Heavenly Spikeman said, this is the lamest thing I've ever read, and I would say he needs to start therapy immediately, but I suspect he is making this story up to mask his real feelings. He is scared and doesn't want to be a dad. He is making up this perfect family dream thing, either subconsciously or consciously. Seeing a birth is not what creates bonding. Cupcake Kirby said, this sounds like a mental health issue. It sounds like his bond with the baby isn't living up to what he expected. Honestly, this has nothing to do with you, your daughter, or the C-section. It's just a convenient thing for him to blame for his feelings. I imagine that even if he had seen her be born, he would have another excuse for why he isn't feeling the way he expected. A lot of people don't feel a strong bond with their infant, and it's perfectly normal, so I can't fault him for that. However, he needs to get therapy if this is how he feels. Leaving and having another kid isn't going to solve this for him. I'm sorry this is happening to you, but it's not your fault. If he's not willing to get help, then there's nothing you can do. Update. I wanted to update and thank everyone who sympathized with me and tried to help. There isn't much new, but some things have happened. I can't link my first post here according to the rules, but these two posts are the only ones this throwaway has, so it should be easy to find. Several people suggested asking him to come with me to a therapist so I could get help understanding why he's leaving. He agreed and our appointment was yesterday. It didn't go badly, but it didn't go well either. He was very upfront with the therapist. He didn't try to mince words or refuse to answer questions. He told the therapist, they got to bond the entire pregnancy. That baby is made of their body. I can't compare to that. My work started at birth and I wasn't there, so I don't feel like I ever got hired, if that makes sense. Yeah, he compared it to not having an employment contract. I get the metaphor, I guess, but I'm not sure how it translates to him not being able to bond. Several people made transphobic comments, and several others asked if maybe my lack of gender was an issue. I assumed no, because my husband had known that I'm non-binary since before we started dating, but I did bring it up while we were with the therapist. My husband insists that no, it has nothing to do with anything. He didn't care about what I am, but rather how I did. The therapist was very focused on trying to help me understand, and I appreciate that. I have no complaints with him. I'm still completely in the dark though, and my husband has started talking about choosing a lawyer. He says he wants a clean break before our daughter gets too attached. Update 2. My other posts can be seen in my post history, but the short of it is that I gave birth to my daughter in September. My soon-to-be ex-husband did not see her birth. Things went very badly, and I needed emergency intervention. He was not in the room for the C-section. About a month and a half ago, he informed me that he cannot bond with her because he did not see her be born, and he wants to divorce so he can start over on his dreams of a close-knit family. We have filed for divorce. I have taken my daughter and moved back in with my parents, who aren't very happy about the divorce but are thrilled to have the chance to nanny my daughter. Life was in stasis for about a week after my last post until my father-in-law asked us to come over for dinner. He informed me that my soon-to-be ex-husband had asked for his help paying for a lawyer. He had agreed with the requirement that we all sit down and have one last talk about the situation. He opened by saying that he thinks getting this over with would be best for me and my daughter, so he's willing to help, but he wanted to take one last shot at fixing it. The one last shot ended up being several hours of talking. My father-in-law bluntly demanded that my soon-to-be ex-husband explain his reasoning. He repeated the can't bond thing, and my father-in-law asked why. The employment contract analogy was brought up again. After much back and forth, what do you mean by this, why that, my father-in-law just said, I'm not buying this, what's the real reason? My soon-to-be ex-husband insisted until the end that what he'd been saying all along was his reasoning. He did not see my daughter be born, so he can't bond. He tried. He insisted. The connection isn't there. He was supposed to connect when my daughter was born. There was supposed to be a spark of connection between them, but that spark can only happen right at birth, I guess. In his mind, he can't get it now. My father-in-law asked if my soon-to-be ex-husband thought my daughter wasn't his. He insists he has no doubts he is my daughter's biological father. My father-in-law asked if my soon-to-be ex-husband was seeing someone else. Was there a woman or another pregnancy somewhere? My soon-to-be ex-husband did not react well to this. He threw his phone down on the table and said that we were free to search it. He's not a scumbag. After that, the conversation turned to post-divorce life. My soon-to-be ex-husband offered up that he'd been running the numbers and would volunteer $50 per month in alimony and $50 per month in child support. He doesn't have to do either, mind you, because we're divorcing and he wants to cut all ties with the kid, but he wants to be fair. $50 in alimony, whatever. I have a job and a roof over our heads. I don't need it. $50 in child support? That is a lot less, whatever, but I'm refusing to stress about it. The court will handle child support amounts. I'm making myself not be angry and letting them deal with it. I admit I tuned out most of the rest of my father-in-law's attempt to talk sense into his son after that comment. I think that was when the coffin finally nailed itself shut. I started packing when we got home and went to my parents' house the next day. I'm no longer talking to my soon-to-be ex-husband. His lawyer talks to mine. We haven't spoken in almost 3 weeks. I don't think I need to tell you that he hasn't shown any concern for my daughter, but here I am anyway. The day after I got there, my sister kidnapped me to her place. We got very drunk and talked about everything. I screamed a lot. I got most of it out of my system. After that, we had more drinks and watched terrible horror movies. I woke up the next day with the headache from hell, but otherwise feeling better than I had in a long time. My job can't transfer me, just my luck, but I've been promised a glowing reference, and I'm cashing out what little paid leave I have left to add to my savings. My father-in-law asked after the failed conversation if I would be cutting him off. I assured him that he might not see us as much because of how far away my parents live and not knowing where I'll end up, but he's not getting rid of me or my daughter that easily. He was very happy to hear that, so that's where I am. Papers have been filed, my daughter and I have moved out of the house, and I'm doing my best to ignore my soon-to-be ex-husband's existence. Thank you all again for listening to me cry and complain over the past couple of months. Update 3. I promised an update once things were over, so here I am. My story can be seen in my post history, but the short of it is that my ex-husband did not see my daughter's birth and decided that because he wasn't there, he couldn't bond, so he and I are divorcing and he's going to start over. My daughter turned 1 this month. She landed on nod as her first word. I suspect this is because my father-in-law brought home a foster to adopt dog a few months back whose previous owners called her Nod or Nodder. My daughter loves the heck out of this dog, you guys. My father-in-law sends me pictures of her every day to show to my daughter. My ex-husband and I are just waiting on some final paperwork for the divorce to be complete. He has not contested anything. He did look the judge in the face and repeat the whole didn't see birth can't bond thing. His lawyer did try to defend that claim. He presented studies that he claimed said things about damages to bonds when fathers weren't present and actively involved, but my ex-husband was there and active and involved throughout my entire pregnancy and was present for my entire labor until things went wrong. It wasn't a case of, oh, you knocked someone up 5 years ago, now bond with this kid. My daughter was definitely less than an hour old when he held her for the first time, probably less than half an hour, and I had proof for this claim too. Among other things, I had pictures of the two of us at multiple prenatal appointments. My father-in-law was also willing to file a statement talking about how my ex-husband and he were involved in my pregnancy. Needless to say, the judge was not impressed with my ex-husband's lawyer's arguments. He tried to push my ex-husband for therapy and made comments about how he would regret this later. My ex-husband stood stubborn with his "I need to start over" line. He has visitation rights per the paperwork. Care to guess if he's used them? He does also have to pay child support. If you've read my post history, you might remember that he offered me a gigantic $50 per month. That's all he's been paying, despite the judge ordering a lot more, so that's a fight I'm going to have to steel myself for. I'm surprised he started skimping out before the divorce was even final, but he did tell me and my father-in-law that he's not a scumbag, so in his mind he's probably just keeping true to his word or something. He's shown no interest in my daughter, no other children, pregnancies, or potential partners have popped up either. As best my father-in-law can tell, my ex-husband is single and not showing any interest in dating yet. I don't know how I feel really. It would make more sense if he was cheating. It would be easier to have something solid to point to, go you into a tornado for making my life fall apart, and then try to move on. But all lived evidence points to him honestly thinking he has to do this. I'm in therapy. I've found a place about midway between my parents and my father-in-law, and I'm still doing freelance work. I would rate myself okay. My daughter is happy, healthy, and kicking off. She will be fine. I plan to never speak to my ex-husband again once this paperwork is done. I just have to wait to be able to totally start over myself. Thank you so much for making it to the end of the video, and thank you also to partner of the channel, GamerSupps. Use code DLAM to support the channel and get 10% off of your purchase, link in the description. I'm sure many of you like me have a hankering for daily caffeine, so go check them out. Lately, I've been a big fan of Titty Milk and Acid Rain, but they've got dozens of other flavors for y'all to try out. Anyway, thanks again for reaching the end, and I hope you all have an amazing passage of the next 24 hours.